Hello everyone, and welcome to my own ultimate guide to Stepford County Railway. This video is going to be related to signaling, and this video is going to be for the people who just want to get a better idea on how to signal or is in the process of going to become a signaler in Stepford County Railway. Before this video starts, I would like to give a personal shout out to these 4 players: Teen Wolf, Minecraft 321, Kaja KR Plays, Abs Loves Jesus, and Adorbs Leah. These 4 have helped me out in making this video and have made my life easier when recording this video. Also, before we get started, there's a bit of a disclaimer. Everything that you see in this video, I instructed everyone to do. So don't spread any hate. Everything that you see, I told them to do just so that all of you can have a better idea on what to expect whenever you are signaling in a live server. And everything that is happening, this is based off of my own personal experience and my own opinion, relating off of the signaler guide on how to properly do things. So this is not an official ultimate guide. This is just based off of my own opinion and how I think that things should be done based off of the signaler guides that are provided. Other than that, let's get right on with the video. So, whenever you sit down at a signaling desk, what do you see? You see 3 screens that are currently in front of you. You see the main network screen. To your right is the full train list screen, and to the left is your platform allocation screen. So what is on the signaling network screen? Basically, all that screen is, it just shows you everything that you can control in your zone. All the signals that you can control in your zone are identified by a teal border that runs around the barrier of your zone. Anything that you can control inside of that teal border, you can control. Anything outside of that border, you cannot control. You also notice you see like these colorful lights that are on the screen. Each light indicates a signal for that block. So depending on the signal status, it helps you know that, hey, this is a green signal, or this is a red signal, or just whatever. It just gives you a current signal status for that block. And you also notice, as you're in the zone, on top of these gray lines that indicate active railway, you see these green rectangles that has a random letters and numbers. What are those? Well, one thing that you should know is that the random letters and numbers is the train head code. So whenever you see a random number like 2P00, that is the head code for that train. And whenever you click on that green rectangle, it gives you a little bit more information. It tells you the head code, who their operator is, the train model number, tells you their final destination, tells you where their next stop is, and it tells you whether they are late or on time, which I do think is very helpful. And whenever you go to the screen that's to the right, you're able to get a little more information about the train. It tells you the train head code, where their next stop is, who the operator is, who the driver is, what their terminating station is, whether they have a guard. It also tells you which zone that they are in, if they're in your zone or not. Now, if you click on the green rectangle that is on the train list, it gives you just a little bit more information. It tells you the same thing, just goes into more detail of who the driver is, who the guard is, if there is an active guard. It tells you whether they're late or on time. It gives you just a little more information. And in the top right corner, you are able to see that you can select a train whether it is in your zone or not. So if you uncheck the box in the top right corner, it tells you every single train that's currently driving in the entirety of the Stepford network. But if you have that box checked, it only shows you the trains that are in your zone. It doesn't always update automatically. It does take a little bit of time, but this is helpful to know, to see in a little bit more detail which train is currently in your zone. And now, whenever you go all the way to the left, you see platform allocations. Now, all that this is, it just shows you every single platform that is in your zone in alphabetical order and in numerical order based off of the alphabetical order for each station. So for this zone, it starts all the way up at Beachley and goes all the way down to, I believe, Stepford Victoria. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It goes all the way down to Willowfield. So it just tells you every single name, every single platform number. And alongside the platform number, it tells you which train is currently occupied. So it says it'll be occupied by whatever. But then, whenever you see the train is ready to go, you'll see this yellow flashing across all three screens. Across the platform allocations panel, you'll see the bar for the platform will be flashing, indicating that it's ready to go. Like I'll say, train head code is ready to start. On the main allocation panel, you'll see just a little yellow rectangle flashing at you that tells you that it's ready to go. And then on the red screen, you'll just see just a yellow dot flashing TRTS. That's basically all that it is. And this just tells you that somewhere between the 0 and 40-second mark after it initiated ready to go, it just tells you that this train is indeed ready to go. Now, after 40 seconds, if you haven't allocated TRTS or the train is just sitting there, AFK, the platform will go from a flashing yellow to a flashing red. This doesn't mean anything. This just tells you that you need to give this train a priority when it comes to leaving because it's been sitting there for a while. Now, obviously, like as long as you gave priority or you basically gave the clearance for the train to go out of the platform, then it's really on them. Like you can't do much. But just keep in mind, if you see that, then it's going to be on you if you haven't set the signal to let that train go. Other than that, those are the basics of what you will see whenever you are sitting down in a chair at a signaling desk. So since this video is about signaling, let's dive a little bit deeper on what you will see whenever you click on a signal. Now, at any given time, whenever you click on a signal, it'll basically tell you that signal status. So whenever you click on a signal, it'll basically tell you that signal identification number, how many lights it has, whether it has 3 aspect or 4 aspect, and it also gives you the color options to basically let you change what that signal is. Now, the identification number that is specified directly to their appropriate line setup. Like for example, when you're if you're on the Stepford Network rail line, you will see the signals marked as an S. If it's on a connect only line, it'll be based as a C, like a C, then the identification number. Airlink that's primarily Airlink will be A, then the identification number. And then primarily Waterline will basically be marked as a W, and then the number of that signal, which is very helpful to know because they go up in ascending order. So going from Stepford Victoria to Lynn by the Sea goes from signal 1 all the way up to like 612, I believe. So that's a lot of signals. And then Waterline, Airlink, Connect, all that, they're basically the same thing. Now, if you want to change the signal aspect, you can either click on the colors that you see as part of viewing the signal, or you can do 1, 2, 3 on your keyboard. 1 basically tells you to set the signal to red, 2 is caution, 3 is proceed. I always do 1 and 3 and 2 very rarely. 3, if you set the signals to proceed, it'll automatically set it to caution and then to proceed eventually if the train is far enough ahead. I just set it to proceed just so that it can just flip it automatically to the best aspect for that zone, just so that the train can go at any given time. Now, you notice that there are 3 dots whenever you are viewing the signal. What are those dots? Well, whenever you click on those dots, it'll give you more information about the signal. It tells you the identification number, what aspect it's in, the train that is waiting at that signal, if it's in that block approaching the signal, where it's going, what the operator is, the unit model number, the driver, the trains that are in the block, if it's past the signal. It also tells you what associated platform or area it is based off that signal, the ones that you can control. You can't control every signal. It tells you what platform, what station, train's ready to start. It also gives you the option to change the signal while you're in that view as well. But you can also click view camera. Whenever you click on that, you're able to view the camera around that signal. Whenever you view the camera, primarily you're viewing it from the backside facing forward, and you will be able to see the train approaching you. Whenever you click the 180 degree button or the rotate button, it'll basically show you seeing the front side of the signal, and the train will be going through the signal beyond that. So if there's a conflict that you need to see at a junction, you can easily figure out what's going on there just based off the camera. And the camera is pretty much on point for accuracy when it comes to live streaming. So you can basically see everything that is going on if there's a conflict. That'll be an easy way for you to access if there's any issues. So for this section, I'm just going to talk to you briefly about junction setup and rules. Generally, whenever you're signaling, you're basically keeping an eye on all of the junctions that have conflicting tracks. What are conflicting tracks? Long story short, conflicting tracks is whenever a rail line crosses over, merges with another rail line. And you have to keep a sharp eye at those locations because you don't want trains spatting or potentially causing an accident. So, what do you do at each specific location? Well, generally, there are platform signals, there are two-track crossover signals, there's merging tracks, and then there are triangle junctions. Starting off, we have the platform signals. Generally, at a terminating platform or at some stations, a through platform, signals will be set to red. The primary reason is because those tracks are merging. Now, trains going in don't have to worry about a red signal. All signals can be open for trains that are coming into a station, but for trains that are leaving, all those platform signals must be set to red. Now, for junctions or for two-track crossovers, the best rule of thumb is to just have one signal set to proceed and the other set to danger at any given time. The only time when you're allowed to set two signals to green and one to red is if you know for a fact that the train, like the two trains approaching the junction from opposite directions, will not conflict with each other. At Stepford Victoria, this is a good example. So if a train is leaving from platforms 1 through 3 and a train is coming into Stepford Victoria, you can easily set those to green, the train coming out of 1 through 3 and approaching Stepford Victoria, because those won't conflict with each other. You can basically guarantee that they won't conflict. But if a train from 4 through 6 is entering or leaving and a train from Stepford Victoria is coming in, you're going to have to be careful with that one, because the train entering could go to platforms 1 through 3 or 4 through 6. You just don't know. But come from the other way, like I gave in the first example, basically guarantees that there won't be any conflict. So the general rule for a two-track crossover is just have one signal set to proceed, the rest set to danger, and you'll be okay. Now, what about merging tracks? Now, generally, merging tracks just depends. As long as you have one signal set to proceed, you should be okay. You never want to have two signals set to green. If you're unsure, just set both of them to red. It's better to have more signals at a junction set to red than more green. If you're unsure, always set to red, but just make sure that if there's a conflict or an issue, have it set to red. But whenever you set a signal, make sure you change it back to the way that it is supposed to be based off of the signaling setup guide. So merging tracks usually depends. If it's coming from a siding onto the main line, that's the siding signal should be red. But if it's at a station like at Coxley, or I'm sorry, not Coxley, but Bowdoin, then that's kind of a toss-up. Generally, since I believe the 1.8 updates, since there's random platform allocations, that has to be red. But prior, it used to be platform 2 was set to green and platform 3 was red, because you would always go to platform 2 first before you go to platform 3. That's how it usually worked. But now it's different. Set both to red. But if you're at Faraday Road and there's like an actual signal there, platform 3 is set as basically a siding, and platform 2 is the main line at Faraday Road. So platform 2 signal will be set to green and the other one will be set to red. Now, what about triangular junctions? Triangular junctions, every time, no matter what, always set the inner triangle to red. Always set the inner triangle to red and leave the outer ones open. The reason because generally there won't be any trains conflicting if they just go on the outside. They'll always avoid each other. But since trains going through the middle will have conflicting tracks, it's best to have those set to red. Now, whenever you're letting a train go through the triangle, what I mean go through is that it's bypassing or it's going by the inner triangle of signals. That's basically my definition of through when it comes to triangular junctions. If a train is going through, always set the two outer signals that's conflicting with the junction to red and then set that one inner triangle signal to yellow so that the train can go through. Like, for example, at the Beachley Triangle, generally, if a train's going from the Beachley siding all the way down to Stepford Victoria, the bottom left signal of the inner triangle is the one that you need to set to yellow. So the two most south signals you need to set to red, and then set the southernmost signal in the inner triangle to yellow. The train go through and then reset it back to what it was supposed to be. So those are the basic rules for junction signal setup, and those are the basic rules for that setup. Signaling setup, zone A or alpha. Normally, whenever I set up this zone, I always start down in Stepford Victoria, and I just move in a clockwise rotation. I always set the signals to red first, and just go in a clockwise rotation. It's best for me to go in that direction because it's just easier to just keep in motion and just to make sure that I get everything correct. Now, the goal whenever you set up is that you should time yourself for 2 minutes, which I will explain later on. But generally, for an assessment or for the assessment, if you're in the trainee signaler role, is that you need to have a 2-minute limit for yourself, because if you don't, then you could lose a chance to get promoted after you complete the assessment. So it's best whenever you're setting up, always set a timer for yourself whenever you're doing these zones. Just make sure that everything is correct before you announce, hey, this zone is ready to go. Always double or triple check yourself. So as I complete Stepford Central, I double check everything. I work backwards just to make sure that I have everything correct before I announce zone A or zone whatever zone is under manual control. After saying that, then that basically just tells everyone that you are in control, which is it's very helpful for them so that they know, like, hey, now these signals are in control in this zone. So now I know what to expect, and I know that this guy up in the sky, literally, is in charge, and everything else. Now, whenever you're done, it's best to announce that you're just done. Just say zone A or zone whatever zone is under auto control, or back to auto, or back to whatever. This basically is like you telling them that you're done. It's very important that you do this just so that they know that those are back to automatic control. Now, for Zone B, this is a much simpler setup. There's a lot less traffic. But again, just make sure that you have a 2-minute timer, regardless of any zone, have 2 minutes, and just work in any direction that you go. I tend to work in about the same directional rotation that I do. Like for Zone A, I do clockwise. And for Zone B, I tend to do clockwise as well. I don't do this zone a lot, but generally whenever I do, it's just best to just set it just clockwise. So just make sure you have everything correct before you mess up anything. Just make sure that you take care of that. Other than that, there's no reason to rush these zones. I'm gonna let y'all watch the rest of the zones. Just make sure that you'll have a better idea on what it is to whenever y'all set up the zones. It's very simple. Don't rush. But please set a 2-minute timer so you can just time yourself. And if you do better than 2 minutes, just keep practicing and just keep getting it down until you're set up and ready to go. Now, one thing that I will add is that whenever you're setting up, you have to be careful of any trains that are in the zone. Any trains that are in the zone, you basically have to give a priority over to what you're setting up. Because if it's coming across a junction and the train is coming to a track where you normally set it to red, set that track to green temporarily. Make sure that the train passes and then switch it back to whatever the setup is. Just make sure you get it correct. Zone C, very simple. Just make sure that you have all of the signals set to red of what you believe is red. And you can definitely use the signaling guide or the desk setup manual just to make sure that everything in that zone is properly set up and ready to go. If you miss a signal, you will get counted off. Just so that you know, which I'll explain more of that later on. Other than that, I'm just going to let y'all continue to watch just how I set up the rest of these zones. And, yeah. Take notes, please. So sitting in the supervisor chair, it's best to avoid that. There is no general rule about sitting in the chair, but from my understanding, it's best to just avoid it at all costs. There's no reason to sit in there. You can't really do anything in that chair. It's just a viewing spot of all the zones. So if you see a supervisor chair, it's best to just avoid it, just not touch it. So, train race scenario. What is that? Well, this generally happens whenever there are two trains leaving from Stepford Central going all the way to Stepford East. This happens whenever train on platforms 4 through 9 and platform 10 leave at the same time and they're going towards Stepford East. Now, you may notice this conflict. There is a conflict towards Stepford East that there is a junction where the trains from platform 10 go to platform 2, but the train from platform 4 through 9 can either go to 1 or 2. So the best rule when this happens is to let the train with the highest priority or the greatest lateness to go first. When they go first, which in this case is the lower train, this train will shoot up into platform 2, basically guaranteeing a smoother transition for the train at platform 1. The train that just left Stepford Central from 4 through 9 can get access to Stepford East. Now, generally, this is a tricky situation to follow because at any given time that this can happen. And one thing that I always do is that regardless of lateness, which I don't know if this is allowed, but regardless of lateness, I always let the train from platform 10 go up first into Stepford East, and I let the next train coming from 4 through 9 go in. The reason because this increases the flow of traffic going into Stepford East. Because if I let the trains from 4 through 9 go in first, then the train at platform 10 will have to wait from the train at platform 2 to get clear, which then will create a backlog and a gridlock, a small gridlock, and it will just create just a big mess and will potentially increase lateness for the second train. So whenever I do this helps just increase the flow of traffic and you're able to get more trains in at one spot. Now obviously after Stepford East, it's kind of a toss-up on which way they'll go based off of their head code. But generally, the train at platform 2 will arrive first. They'll get boarded. They'll go on their way, and then platform 1 will go. After platform 1 goes, then it's just back to normal service. But this is the train race scenario, and this could happen at any given time, not just here. And generally, always let the trains with the highest priority and the greatest lateness go first. If the other one spats, it's on them. The overshooting scenario. What is that? Now, this generally happens whenever a train overshoots a platform and causes the signal to go to red. Now, there's no reason to panic. This is all on the driver. The problem is that it makes it a little bit more difficult to find out whether the train is ready to start or not. Because it shows that the train is in the next block. It could be like right in front of it, or it could be way ahead. Depends on how far the block is. And generally, you really can't do anything about it. The moment the train's in the next block, they just have to go. You really can't have control of what they do. So if there's a train that overshoots a platform and then emerges with a track right afterwards, then the train that is waiting at the junction will have to wait for the train that cleared the platform, which I believe this is the case at Layton City area. I believe this is the case for it. But generally, if the train overshoots, don't worry about it. You can't do much. Just let them do their own thing. Same rules apply. And just try and get them out of there as soon as possible just so that they can continue on the run. It's not the end of the world if they overshoot. Just let them be and just try and get them back rolling so that more trains can go and hopefully not overshoot. So the use of commands and signaling. When is a good time to use those commands? Well, generally, at any given time, it's a good time to use the commands, but there are two commands that you cannot use without permission. Part-time mute and part-time kick. What are those commands? Well, part-time mute and part-time kick generally come up whenever there is a player that is just being a really bad sport when it comes to playing the game. Now, part-time mute comes into effect whenever there's constant spamming, as you see what's going on. You basically have to warn them and tell them, hey, please stop doing this. If the supervisors don't see a warning in the assistant commands channel, then the warning won't pass. There has to be enough evidence to basically prove to the supervisors that, yes, this is appropriate to issue a mute. Now, generally, what I like to do is I like to give 3 warnings. After the third warning, I take a screenshot and tell them, hey, what's going on. Now, one thing I do to cover my butt is that they're spamming up at the top. There's my little warning, and then I wait like 5 seconds or so and see more spamming happen. The reason because if in the pick you see more spamming, I'll tell the supervisors, oh shoot, this is still going on. I need to send or approve this part-time mute. And then when the part-time mute gets approved, you can use the command key mute player, and then they get muted for the X amount of time. And then after the timeout, if they keep going, same thing applies. But let's say that they are again really annoying, and due to reasons for not obeying the mute, then this is time to step it up a little bit. Now this is where the part-time kick comes into play. Now the PTK will just initiate a kick, and the part-time kick basically ends the moment they leave the server. So the moment you kick them, it's basically over. The part-time kick is just like 2 seconds. So a part-time kick, the screenshot requires uncropped images, and it basically has to show as much proof as possible for that part-time kick to initiate, because generally it's a heavier command to use, and it requires a uncropped evidence. For a part-time mute, it can be cropped, but I just choose to uncrop it just because it's easier for me to do that. But for a part-time kick, it must always be uncropped. It must show as much evidence as possible saying that, like, who is doing this, and it must be solved. Now, part-time kick happens, they're gone. But what if they're blocking something? Like, what if there's a driver that is AFK? Or what if there's a spammer that's intentionally blocking the tracks at this waterline connect express line crossover? Now, whenever they're sitting there, they're basically blocking a major thoroughfare, and it's best to just go around and just ignore them. But if they're causing a major issue where there's tons of trains, then this is when things get down. Like, after you warn them, then you can just issue a respawn command just on your own. You don't have to get permission. I always give about 3 warnings, and if they don't obey by the 3rd warning, then I just issue a respawn, and then traffic flow can keep going. But if it happens again, I give them 3 warnings, and I respawn them. This is basically to just cover my butt, and I always take screenshots of the incidents just in case, because anytime you use a command, you go underwater, and you could be in big trouble. So it's best to just cover your butt with as many screenshots as possible, just to make sure that it's all said and done, and that you can just cover your butt. Always cover your butt when you're using these commands, because if you do, you will basically just stay as a signal. If you don't, then you could be in trouble. So take as many screenshots as possible, cover your butt, and just let it go. Other than that, that's the basic use of commands. Now, there are obviously other commands like dispatcher list, train list, and all that. Dispatcher list just tells you all the active dispatchers. Train list tells you all the active trains. All the commands that you'll be able to see can be viewed on the signaler guide, and it tells you all their purposes. So, this is the big moment. You understand signaling, now how to become a signaler. This part is always the hardest part, becoming a signaler. There are 3 steps. Step 1 is to pass the application process. Step 2 is to pass the practical, and step 3 is to pass the actual assessment. For the application, it can be open at any given time in the Stepford County Railway Discord server. You don't know when it is going to open, and people generally the managers, it's generally the managers, will drop hints on when they open. After you fill out the application with the best of your ability, you submit it, you have to wait, and then if you get approved, you're in the trainee signaler program. After that, you basically have 2 more steps. Step 2 is to pass the practical assessment. The practical assessment is you're just in a private server and you're just getting a feel for signaling. You can have as many attempts as you want. You have unlimited fails. If you fail once, you just get to go again, keep trying and trying and trying until you pass. After you pass, then this is the toughest assessment. You basically have 3 tries to pass your assessments, because if you fail, you're basically done. The actual assessment is done in a live server. You cannot join the server before or after your assessment. After the assessment, you have to just sit back and wait for your results. If you pass, you will get an announcement from the trainer saying that congratulations, you passed. You get the signal, you get to keep your rank. If not, you're demoted back to guard, and you have 2 more attempts to pass. But if you fail your 3rd time, you have a 50-50 chance of getting a 4th chance and get cut from the program. So the 4th chance only implies if you showed constant improvement throughout your entire assessments. If you show constant improvement, then you're given a 4th shot. If not, then you're done. So the signaling process is very strict, but it is definitely worth the reward whenever you get it done. Well, this concludes my ultimate guide to becoming a signaler. Obviously, there's a lot more, but I felt like I just went over the basics on how to become a signaler. And I do hope that all of you did enjoy this video. And if y'all did enjoy, then please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. And if this guide has really helped you to get a better understanding on signaling, then please let me know in the comments. That would be greatly appreciated. Other than that, I do hope all of you who are watching this pass and become a signaler. And I will see all of you out there in the Stepford County Railway universe. Hope you have a good day. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.